I wanted to thank the organisers. It's been really amazing, and talking to you about collaboration and innovation, I think this crowd is already well into that. So these are observations from a member of the executive at Museum Victoria, but I have done some real work in the past. So it's hearing Harry say that most directors don't understand what he was talking about is a bit confronting. I understood most of it, so that was good. Oh, blimey. Keeps scaring me. So I'm from Melbourne, which is about 9 hours away, and live in it's a lovely city, and this is a great photo of the museum, the main museum, Melbourne Museum, and the Royal Exhibition Building, which is one of only 2 heritage listed buildings in Australia. The other one's the Sydney Opera House. So quickly, a little bit about me. I studied architecture and archaeology at Sydney Uni a very long time ago, and have really done a lot of different things in museums. You might have looked at the bio. So Museum Victoria is the state museum in Victoria. So we have 3 museums, a Science Museum, Immigration Museum, and a Natural History Museum. And I think I'm probably one of the only people from a Natural History Museum here today. So, of course, Linda. A lot of the things you're going to see are quite different to what you've been seeing already. There's not a lot of art, although some of it does get close, I guess. So big museum, big buildings, a lot of people, a lot of visitors on our websites, huge number of booked education visits across the 3 museums, and a very big social media push that we've been working on for a number of years now. And the e-subscribers is fantastic because they've opted in, all those people, and that's pretty amazing in a city of only 3.5 million people. So that's the buildings. We're pretty active around the world, and Sarah spends some of her time with us. And Sarah and I have worked together for a very long time together now. And I guess that sort of raises a question about the role of management in enabling these sort of things to happen. And I've always believed in teamwork, always believed in collaboration, and love the sort of serendipity nature of it. We don't know what's going to happen with a lot of those projects when we start, and things keep on unfolding over the years that you would have denied yourself if you hadn't made that decision and taken that, what is often a risk, but usually a fairly small risk, and you can manage that. Museum Victoria runs a networked management model, which has been really successful for us. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, I guess, the sort of things you need in place before you collaborate, because I think a lot of people often head into things when they're not ready. But a little bit first about just how much the world's changed. I always do this in presentations because I think it gets people to think about the amazing things we do now. So, this is the old museum, and most of our museums were like this up until the 60s, and even beyond in many places. I love this slide. I wish it was so easy now. And when I started work in 1987 at the Powerhouse in Sydney, this is how we documented collections. I remember handling that object myself, in fact. And that's what went with each object. And that was full of paper, photographs, notes, the curatorial file they were called. And now it's all happening there. And most of us have been very, very slow in getting there. How many of you have a sort of policy that says curators should contribute to Wikipedia? One hand, fantastic. We do too. Because that's where people are, and we do primary research, and it should be there. So it's a no-brainer to me that that's what our staff have got to do. And it's just nonsense to think that it's not authoritative, because it's the best and most authoritative thing there is, really. It's got more peer review and more management than any other sort of source of information. So that's disruptive. And the lack of show of hands is clear demonstration of that. And we're changing rapidly, and we've come in 25 years from none of this to a huge amount. And the things we've seen in the last 2 days are just amazing. And I'm going to show some more. Love these pictures. So that's how we sort of used to consume things. And there was a great shared knowledge across the society because of the television and the few channels, and everyone watched the same things. We talk about the water cooler and the coffee discussions, and that's what it's like now. It's all about me. It's my experience. It's my information. It's it's a sort of one-on-one that we're getting to. And the multi-channels that we have to deliver into now is about people with screens. And it's really turning everything on its head. And it's exciting and it's fun to be part of. And a lot of us have been a part of it since the early 90s. And boy, has it changed. So the new model, certainly for me, it's about these things and all the ways that we deliver to experience, audience, participation and fun. And fun's been coming up in the last few sessions. I'm really pleased about that. Because I think it's really important. And enables learning and engages people, keeps them coming back to your museum or your online presence or whatever it is. Has anyone had a go at that? No, but I'd love to. Is it still there? No. This is a great quote from a Europeana conference last year that I just saw on Twitter and thought that's just terrific. And I show that to our curatorial staff all the time. The ones who are still resisting. So content has become everything in a large museum organisation. And we're still not very good at capturing it. So it's generated all over the place, and particularly around exhibitions where we put most of our effort. I would say at Museum Victoria we probably capture 20% of that in a usable digital asset form that can be repurposed. And that's really shameful, and we're wasting a lot of money in then regenerating and redoing content when we had it already. So there's a huge workflow and change that we've got to engender in the staff in our museums. And it's not all just about structure, it's critical. So this is the sort of mantra we have now. And the OM is a new one that came out of a discussion with our advertising agency last week, and I thought I had to put it up, and that's the notion of out of museum. And so much of what this group do when we generate the online content is going to be consumed out of the museum, and that's something we need to get our heads around. So I made this little slide to show the sort of continuum across the organisation. And that's what we've got to do. From the start of an idea, from the start of an exhibition, from the start of generating a book, we've got to look at how that's going to be used. So, if you're going to collaborate, be ready. And that means having the right staff, it means having the right training regimes, it means having travel policies that support that. It means being able to really participate and be a good partner. I mean, there's nothing worse than entering into a collaboration where you either underperform or you don't show up or you don't deliver what you say you're going to. So be ready. And I think collaboration's more important than it's ever been before, and we've seen so many examples of what happens when we get together and do things. And I think it's probably easier than it's ever been before, but I think that also brings a problem in that there are so many offers now. And if you start becoming a successful organisation, everyone is beating a path to your door to collaborate with you on something. And it's becoming tough to choose and make those decisions. It's stopped going. Why has it, there we go. Why has it stopped going?
It's voice activated.
That is very cool, and that isn't the one I wanted. Okay. I was looking at that slide going, dun, dun. So this is a wonderful quote that really sums up the way I think about collaboration and why it leads to innovation, really. So it stretches our research dollars further, spreads risk, favours serendipity, propagates skills and builds critical mass. It's increasing the engine of innovation. I think that's absolutely right. So, and it stopped again. What's going on? So why do we collaborate? And I think there's a whole bunch of things that I just quickly, I'm going to manual control here. It's the mouse, I've decided. So we learn from each other. We learn a lot when we collaborate. And we become better than just ourselves, and that's really important. Use the network. I mean, the whole world is networked now, and there's an enormous amount of information and skill that you can tap into so quickly. Only collaborate with people and organisations that share your values. I think that's quite important, because again, you'll end up in territory you don't want to be in if you don't. Happens to us with universities all the time. Limit the number of collaborators. I had a slide that said less is more, but I took that out. But I think, if you end up with 20 people around the table, you end up with Europeana, and that's a nightmare to manage. and you need, you know, 5 million euros just to talk to each other. Alignment with organisational strategy. I think it's easy to lose sight of this, and I'm often criticised by other groups in the museum for, you know, why did you get involved with that? And they sort of think that I don't think about that. But everything I get involved in, we have thought about why it's important and why it's going to move us forward. So, you know, but you know, you've got to be careful you don't drift too far away from the core mission of what you're trying to do. Multidisciplinary. Lou, I changed this after your things. I had interdisciplinary on the slide, so I've changed that. But I think this is really, really critical that you involve different people. And I know many of the things that Sarah has done have been the result of really an intersection of archaeology, technology and art. And a lot of the work that we've done, you know, we were the first to do with some of that stuff, and it's been really exciting and a pretty rough ride because people in the museum had no idea what we were doing. And I'll show you some lovely examples in a moment of where we've ended up with some of that stuff. Convergence. You know, the space in between us all is where the innovation is happening. So between the glam word, all the gaps between each letter, and when we get together, really interesting things happen. And I was really impressed with Harry's Europeana talk. That was amazing how they've moved. I remember seeing something in 2008 and I despaired about how they would ever do anything at all. So innovation, I mean, what do we mean really here? And it's not just change for change's sake, and it's not just technical innovation. There's a lot of things that happen. It can be very simple or very complex, and we only use technology where it really will extend the experience or extend the learning opportunity or engagement. Although there is a sort of wow factor that is part of the world that we have to get involved with as well. But I always remember an example at the Powerhouse in the early 90s. We did a circus exhibition and there were a lot of, you know, those terrible early 90s interactives in it that were very clunky and awful. And the most successful interactive was a tightrope 2 inches above the floor. And the kids just loved that and were not going to any of the other things. It was great to see. Probably cost us $10. And it's really, there's an expectation now in audiences, I think, when they come into our buildings that there will be more than just the object. And I think there's something in Australia too about us not having iconic collections of European and Western material that has driven us, I think, to push a little harder in that area. You know, there are still museums in Europe where you go in and there's no interactivity at all, but amazing objects, and it sort of still works, I think, although I'm starting to get less sure about that. So, some examples now. I've got a whole lot of movies and things to show. But one great example for us was the Wild exhibition, which opened, I think, 3 years ago now. And I'll just show you a little video to start with. And sound.
The project team knew that one of the key challenges in this exhibition was how to interpret each of the animals here.
I'm sorry about the lip sync. I don't know why it's not right.
Just the sheer number of animals and the scale of the display meant that it was impossible to put information with each animal or a number with each animal. Our solution to the problem, the worldwide animal viewers.
Great name.
From a concept by Professor Jeffrey Shaw, Museum Victoria worked with a local company, Megafun, to create a sophisticated but easy-to-use system for accessing additional information on each of the animals on display. The design of the worldwide animal viewer really fits in with the design of the rest of the gallery. It's easy to turn. I can shift it to see any animal that I'm interested in having a closer look at. And then all I do is touch the animal on the screen and it brings up a lovely little movie of the specimen.
We did 300 of those.
You can turn it round to view all angles of the specimen and then see a movie of the animal in its natural habitat. So in this way we've really brought the stuffed animals to life on screen for our visitors. There's information here about how the animal is faring and where it lives.
Really
Now
Australian language from Kate.
to find another animal that I might be interested in. And here I'm selecting an owl, the snowy owl.
This is my favourite movie
And
on
again,
screens.
bringing up information and footage of this animal in the wild.
So this exhibition's been really successful. We won an AAM award for multimedia for it. But it really, there's so many things about how we got to here. And, is Jeff here? No. But, Jeffrey did this at ZKM probably 15 years ago. And I've known about that for probably 15 years and was just looking for an opportunity where we could use that technology to really add value. And I think in this context, it's amazing how well it works. And in that gallery, there are other big touchscreens as well. I think this shot shows that, with a lot of information, and it really is a wonderful experience. And it's a new take on your classic old gallery full of stuffed animals, and it really works very well. So on to research collaborations now. And a lot of the work that we've done has been with universities, and Sarah's led a lot of that work. But the Hampy project, which I think everyone's probably a bit sick of now, but I'm going to go through a little bit, has really delivered so many sort of outcomes for us. It started in 2006 with was Epidemic in Paris, wasn't it, that funded it? For Lille, 2006. And then it was an Australian Research Council project. Then we did the exhibition at the Immigration Museum. I should be going through pictures while I do that. And some new technology along the way. An amazing World Heritage Site. There's one of our collaborators. An installation. And eventually we end up, with a new museum being built in India to take the exhibition. And back in 2006, there is no way that we could have predicted that outcome and the amount of learning and the networks and the spin-offs that would happen as part of that. And sort of positioning the museum and City University, in India as a major innovator. And that's fantastic. A few more shots. And some shots of the building. When we got there in January, expecting it to be all finished, it absolutely wasn't. We were working around a lot of workmen. But it looks fantastic now. What is it doing? And the architecture is fantastic, and it's all modelled on what you see in the ancient site. It's wonderful. I don't know why my computer's going slowly. It never happens. Okay, so another Australian Research Council project that's worth describing here is sort of the multifaceted outcomes that can come from a research grant. So we were doing an exhibition called Dynamic Earth, part of a new Science and Life gallery, and we were able to purchase an AV system with the exhibition development funds that contributed to the ARC project. And Sarah, we're now involved in that and getting towards the end stage of a museum data visualisation project using this piece of technology. But in the meantime, we've had it on display now for nearly 2 years in the gallery, which is fantastic. Just got some. I'm not hardly brave enough to start these little movies, but I'll try. So these are just some of the 360 visualisations that were done. The undersea one's particularly good. And the one at the bottom's not so good. Okay. So innovation, challenge and change. Really things that are happening to us all the time. Communities of practice is something I feel really strongly about, and I think, especially in a natural history museum, you don't want to break up the traditional groups. You have to work with them, and you've got to be careful. So we end up moving into a leadership position, building capability, increasing our productivity and becoming more confident with what we can tackle. And I want to talk about computer game sort of companies now who we've collaborated with extensively on our exhibition program now. And just some lovely examples. I mean, from my point of view, the sort of best animators end up in the computer game companies now. And they're great to work with, and they usually add a bit of a twist that we wouldn't do on our own, which is often fun. And I've just got a couple of little movies to show. Watch the temple collapse on the right. So I guess the thing with this is that, I mean, it played a really important part in the actual exhibition flow. And the quality of the animation and the positioning of the camera was incredibly effective at conveying the message about what a bad day it was in Pompeii that day. And I guess, you know, if we hadn't had the relationship before and done the other little projects we did with that company, there was no way they would have given us what's probably a $200,000. It's actually 8 minutes long, the animation. And I guess it's just the point about fostering relationship. This is another really nice one. This is a recent exhibition we did from the British Museum on Mesopotamia. And these animations are now going to travel with that show as it moves around. Of course, the British Museum were horrified we would do this initially. Some of them seem highly implausible to me, but anyway. And these animations are next to the real carvings. But that's what it's like. It's that's great. We've been animating things a lot today, haven't we? But I guess the point, and someone asked a question earlier about, I think it was you, about the paintings. And I think, I mean, what this does for these wall carvings is it puts them into today's language, I guess, that people can relate to. Because if you've been to the British Museum and seen them there are lots and lots of them, but they're pretty dead. And seeing them like this and lighting them well really made it much more impactful for people. Yeah. Just another nice introductory animation on Mesopotamia. And these are the same guys that did Pompeii. That's good. Okay, got the 5-minute gun. That one. And this is just to show, how we collaborate with everyone and the sponsors. We get ourselves on the trams around town. And in the dinosaur exhibition, which we did recently, these viewers, again, really a derivative of something that Jeff's done also. Just see them there. But these are fantastic, and the kids absolutely love these. So you look through and you see the museum, and then you get transported. It's just we have so many tricks in our bag these days from an exhibition point of view. Make a rod for our own back, I guess, in a way. And just another one. And it's great that animation's got to a point where we can afford to do this now quite easily. Okay, so now on to a case study, another one, a more interesting one really in many ways. So this project has another one that's just kept on, it's like a sort of tree branching out as we've gone along. So an original grant from the Education Department to build a tool for kids at school to identify the animals in their local playground area. And one of our staff said, I think we can make this into a field guide. And in his own time, he just set about learning how to program his iPad, and we developed this. And they did the music and made it like an Apple ad, which I really liked when they did it. And the code for this is all open source and available now, and a couple of people have used it. In Auckland Museum have just used it. But it's gone on to spawn a whole lot of other projects with other groups around Victoria. And the frog, and we do a little bit extra each time. So with the frog one now, it's got geolocation built in, so you can actually identify when you've made a sighting, and then that data is uploaded onto our database to improve our location maps. And then another one, a big one, which is a national park, marine national park. So with that code base now, we can do all these projects, and it's fantastic. And we've also just received funding to extend this out across Australia now to do a field guide for each state, which is great. Available, of course, on Android and Apple, and I don't know what we're going to do about Windows. We'll see. The Atlas of Living Australia is a great project as well. We're involved with a big collaboration with all the natural history museums across Australia and the federal government. It's been running for a number of years, and museums have received a lot of money from this project. It's been terrific. The Biodiversity Heritage Library, we're a partner doing the Australian Node for. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but it's a wonderful project, and it's the literature side of the Encyclopedia of Life project. So it's scanning all of the scientific literature back to the 1600s. An amazing project run out of the Smithsonian in Washington. But our guy, we've just designed the international site now, and one of my team is now the project manager for it internationally, which is great. Victorian Collections, quickly, a project that we did for all the small museums in Victoria and galleries and libraries if they want after the terrible bushfires in 2009. So we've built a collection management system that everyone can share across the state, which is terrific. And we haven't promoted it at all yet, and we've got 250 museums have got involved, which is fantastic. I was going to talk about Mona a little bit and why so innovative, but we won't do that. We've talked a bit about this morning. Crowdsourcing projects very quickly. People familiar with Trove in Australia, run by the National Library. 319 million records now. And what I wanted to point out is the newspaper text corrections today, 102,000. There's a community now of 30,000 people who've signed up to the National Library to correct the newspapers, and they're scanning back to the 1850s, and it's extraordinary. And they've sub-organised into their own groups now, the 30,000, and 100,000 corrections every day now. It's quite a phenomenal project, and probably the biggest crowdsourcing thing in the world. It's amazing. And we're doing our own little one we're about to launch. And I'll wrap up. Role of collection. So commoditised and free through the use of APIs, linked open data, core licensing position of Creative Commons. So this is all along the lines of what Europeana's working to achieve. History pin, fabulous project. Collection APIs, I was going to do an example with Digital New Zealand, and there's my little finishing one. And really that's about just taking risk and experiment. Thank you.